Well, guess what?
Back again.
It's back
Again.
again.
And we're back. And we're back.
They're back again.
Back again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Back Again Sequel Podcast, the only podcast that takes a sequel from the past and finds out if it's still worth going back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And today we are continuing what I'm calling our summer sequel blockbusters. On the last episode, we did The Lost World Jurassic Park, so I figured let's do another sequel blockbuster from the past. So today we are doing the follow-up to The Mummy from 1999, and we are doing The Mummy Returns.
A force more powerful than any the world has ever known is about to be unleashed by the two people who should know better. Universal Pictures presents Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Arnold Vosloo, Odette Fair, Patricia Velasquez, introducing Freddie Both, and The Rock as the Scorpion King. The Mummy Returns.
The Mummy Returns comes out in 2001. It's once again written and directed by Stephen Sommers. The evil mummy Imhotep returns to wreak havoc as he resumes his relentless search for power and immortality. To make matters worse, another ancient evil has been unleashed, even more dangerous than Imhotep. Only the heroic Rick and Evelyn O'Connell stand in the way of these twin terrors as they embark on a desperate mission to save the world. Now that description's from Google. And to be honest, like right off the bat, that is a vague description. That's like
It's accurate.
It's surface level. There's so much other shit going on in this movie.
There's a lot happening, yeah. The thing, because it's been a while since I've seen this movie, but I remember seeing it a lot when I was younger. And there were a couple things that stood out to me. One of them was it reeked of Phantom Menace.
Like you're talking about the CGI, like all the added CGI.
The battle at the end, so that is part of it, but a lot of story stuff. Rick being the chosen one, even though he has no connection to that was so ham. I laughed when that happened. He's like, "You have the tattoo. You are a Magi." It's just like, what? No.
Well, even just to like eat, like, because I want to jump into all of this, but like just how we're jumping into it, that's what the movie does, because they have not only so much stuff that they have to set up in regards to the bad guy, but then they have to also like explain all this other stuff that's going on with the characters. Like you just said, like Rick having this tattoo all of a sudden where he is like destined to stop evil. And not to mention that Evelyn is apparently a reincarnated princess.
That makes a little bit more sense because that is kind of, I don't want to say that's set up in the first one, but they establish her like ancestry because it's a throwaway line in the first one, but it's like her mother was Egyptian and her father was like an excavator.
Oh, Egypt is in my blood.
So she has that direct, it's not just like, oh, they're throwing it in there. It's like she has that lineage. That kind of makes sense. And I like the dichotomy that creates with Anck-su-namun. It gives their relationship a little bit more depth because they knew each other in their previous life.
Well, that's the thing. It's like within the first, I mean, you could probably say like 20, 25 minutes, we have to establish all that stuff about not just the characters that are returning, but then the new characters, including the Scorpion King, but also Anck-su-namun and this cult that's trying to raise Imhotep from the dead. And those first 20 minutes are so fast that there are just like so many like exposition dumps and then characters showing up. And there's even moments where like Rick's like, "What are you doing here?" to like,
It's like, yeah, the audience is wondering that too.
O'Connell. What the hell are you doing here?
Like the big example of this in London is when Ardith shows up after they have that kind of big fight at Rick and Evelyn's house. And like they're in the car and Ardith is just dumping exposition about like what's going on. And then you have Rick O'Connell like repurposing the exposition to make it more friendly for the audience.
Okay, you're here. Bad guys are here. Evie's been kidnapped. Let me guess.
Yes. They once again removed the creature from his grave.
And that's after we just got a whole backstory about the Scorpion King. And it's kind of like overwhelming. It's like, Jesus, like there's so many things that we're going to make this movie about. And so for me, I was like, do we need all this stuff?
It was, I don't know, it was a lot, but I wasn't upset with it. There were other things that pissed me off about the movie more than that moment. Because I remember that scene did stick out. It was like we're really just dumping exposition during a car chase because we got to keep it exciting and there's so much information we got to get across.
Now that the bracelet is on his wrist, we have only 7 days before the Scorpion King awakens.
We? What we?
If he is not killed, he will raise the army of Anubis.
I take it that's not a good thing.
Oh, he'll wipe out the world.
You need to relax.
What surprises me is they dump so much exposition, but there's still so much that's not explained. I think the only plot hole I can't figure out is how did Anck-su-namun come back? Like, they explain how she gets her soul back, which was interesting. We can talk about that later. But how does her body come back? You would think they would do a thing where it's like, because like Evelyn is Nefertiri or whatever. So like this would not be Anck-su-namun. This would be some contemporary Egyptian. This would be her ancestor, essentially.
That's what I thought.
But the actress just plays it like a neutered Anck-su-namun, who like she just has no personality, but she's still technically Anck-su-namun. And it's like, I don't know, I guess the director was like, you're still the character, you just don't have your soul. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like, no, you should be their ancestor.
Yeah, but they also don't even have like a line of dialogue that explains like, hi, who are you? What are you doing here? Yeah. Like she just shows up, and I guess from her facial recognition from the first one, the audience is just going to assume that we know who this is, right? Well,
it's like, I want to know who's in charge. Is she in charge, or is the British curator the one who's spearheading everything? Because it seems like she's in charge, but one, she's always behind the scenes of the cult, and two, she doesn't really have any real motivation. Like, why does she want Imhotep to fight the Scorpion King?
Well, I'll give you even one more. Why does this cult even want to bring back Imhotep to destroy the world?
I'm fine with that. They're doomsday like they exist, but it's like when you have like the specific character that we saw in the first movie, it's like where the fuck did she come from?
Well, to connect Ardith with Anck-su-namun, there's literally a moment back in that London scene where like Ardith shows up and Rick O'Connell's like, what are you doing here? Like I said, but then he says that they're raising Imhotep from the dead, and then Jonathan, I believe, is the one that's like, isn't it your job to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then they explain it where it's like, oh, I guess they found the mummy's body again. Because it's like, after the first mummy, supposedly the Medjai hid him somewhere again. And then it's like, they just completely blow over that for the sequel. It's like, oh, they found him again. We can't keep him hidden.
Well, Ardith does say, he goes, they have some woman or person working with them, and she knows stuff that even I don't know.
The woman who is with him, she knows things that no living person could possibly know. She knew exactly where the creature was buried.
So it's once again, we can explain what she knows and like, I guess like what she's doing there, but we still can't explain who the hell this woman is. I think in general, like there's too much of, hey, remember this from the first one as we try to expand it without actually giving anything to the second one. And I think Anck-su-namun is a perfect example of this, where I personally feel that story, that love story between them was wrapped up in the first one. When I was watching this one, I actually thought it would have been more interesting if this was, I don't know, like Imhotep's great granddaughter, and then it could have correlated with Rick and Evelyn and their kid.
Yeah, that would have been better.
Because having that love story where like Rick and Evie aren't really like, their love story's not really like in danger in this, besides her like, the fake out of her death at the end. Like one of the things that you kind of like in the first one is the kind of bicker and the back and forth between Evelyn and Rick, and the fact that it turns into a love story. You know what I mean? And I like the fact that obviously in the sequel that like they're just in love and they're not fighting, but then there's also nothing for them to really do, which further like confirms that this should have been about like sons and daughters and moms and dads. Like, because then if it really was about Alex and about how maybe they're not struggling to raise him, but they're trying to figure out how to raise them while they also love being these adventurers, like that's something that is there in the movie, but it's used more as like a action adventure kind of trope than it is an actual like character exploration. Like, for example, Alex, when we first meet him, he's just like fucking with these three dudes, like, and there's no consequences. He destroys all these pillars. His parents almost die. You would think that they would get back to London. They'd be like, all right, we really need to think if this is the best way to raise a child.
It'd be really funny if it was like they get back to the house and they're like, okay, next year he has to start school because he's that age. And it's like, okay, are we going to send him to school or are we going to keep him with us?
Great. Or maybe you could have started this where they're not bringing him on these adventures, but he really wants to go. And they're like, no. And he's like, listen, you tell me all these amazing stories about how you guys met. I want to go out and I want to look at like tombs and stuff too. So that way, at least when this thing starts, this is Alex's like first time exposure to it. And he's got a little bit of like, but then he's also got a little bit of like,
yeah. So like that first sequence, it's like they didn't just bring him. It's like he snuck along.
Sure.
And then he ends up saving them. So it pays off. I also like the idea of he's supposed to be in school. So when they come back to England, they just get like harassed by like I don't know what you call them, but like a headmaster from like a really hoity-toity school. And they're like, oh, your son's supposed to be in school.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I liked seeing Rick and Evelyn back in their freaking amazing mansion in London, by the way. But I like seeing them back there, and I really do like all the sequences that take place in London because, you know, you have mummy stuff happening in a place where mummy stuff's not supposed to happen. And I think like maybe if the movie like started there instead and then we got back to business, I think it would have been, I don't know, just more digestible because, you know, after the success of the first one, they immediately greenlit a second one and Stephen Sommers just like started writing the script and he started like, okay, we're going to do it bigger. And he was talking about how he really did want to make this like a bigger world and he wanted to make like a really good follow-up to this and he didn't want to repeat a lot of the stuff of the first one. But to be honest, like there feels like there's way too much and they're very reliant on the first one. There is, instead of like bookcases falling over in the first one, it's those pillars.
I noticed that this time. This was the first time I noticed that, yeah.
We also have a return of like those other mummies that Rick fights at the end of the first one after Imhotep's resurrected and he's like,
oh, no, not these guys again!
I also, I mean, this happens later in it, but we also get a repeat of like, you know, the water face instead of like the sand face from the first one. And there's also like, you know, reading a book and asking what the symbol is, which is also the callback of, it's a stork. What is this?
I was okay with it. To your point, though, when it comes to just like rehashing the beats, I really felt that when it came to the canopic jars and getting
that's another one.
It's almost like he forgot that Imhotep comes back in mummy form, and it's like, all right, well, we have to sacrifice the lives of people so that he can regenerate his true form. And it's like the Anck-su-namun stand-in doesn't react to him being in mummy form. So this normal mortal is just like, oh, that's completely. There's no reason for him to change to human form because he's not off-putting to her. Why does it matter? And then it's like, well, we got to do it anyway. We can't do it this. We can't stretch it out for 30 minutes like we did in the first one. So it's like they trap them in the room and trick them into opening the crate. It felt so lazy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like that first one is so simple where like you can really like, you know, the fun of it is seeing how this mummy kind of like gets back to human form, you know? And in this one, it's like, well, we got to get him back so he can be ready like to fight the Scorpion King. But it's like, I'm kind of more interested to find out how that Scorpion King turned into half a man, half a scorpion.
They kind of do that with the pygmies, but I don't see how that's connected to the Scorpion King. That just seems like a completely different part of the world.
You see, the pygmies, you know, talk about like, because I was thinking about what could you cut out of this movie, and I really do feel like the pygmies is like a big one because when I was a kid, I liked that.
Them with something else.
Yeah, because like I liked them when I was a kid, but watching it this time, I was like, this feels like just gobbledygook before they got to get to like the place. You know what I mean? And it was also funny just watching Lost World. Because they do a tall grass scene also with like the raptors taking people out. So I was like, oh, look, another tall grass scene. But this time we got little dead monkeys.
Hello there.
And I also want to just like, I want to talk about one specific scene with the bad guys because there was a couple moments in this movie that I like to call, you don't notice it when you're a kid, but when you're adult, you're like, huh? And after Rick and Evelyn come home to the mansion and like Jonathan's also there and he gets taken by the cult guys and they're about to like kill him and then Rick comes into the bathroom and sees that like, oh, what's going on in here? After someone throws a snake at Rick and then he catches it. And then after someone throws a knife at Rick and then he catches it. Mm-hmm. Someone then goes, fuck this. So they pull out a machine gun. And he runs away from the machine gun, but he jumps on a chair that flips it over, and then the butt of the chair is what's protecting him from the bullets. And what I want to know is, what do you think that chair's made out of that is able to stop machine gun bullets? Like rapid bullets.
I don't know if machine guns had that much stopping power back in the day. So
oh my God.
I don't know. Of all the things that are like unrealistic in this movie, that seemed realistic to me. I thought you were going to bring up Jonathan in the soapy bath, and like none of the water had been disturbed. So it's like, how did he get in there?
He made a bubble bath really quick before he came up.
He would have to, because you can't, if the bubbles were already there, if you got in there, they would be disturbed. So he had to have hid under clean water and then poured the bubbles on him.
What'd you do this time?
Well, you'll be happy to know I've drawn you a bath.
And like I said, it makes sense why they make a sequel to this movie, because the first one's like a huge success. Just to get into the budget in the box office a little bit, The Mummy from 1999 has a budget of $80 million, and it's got a box office return of $418.1 million. And then The Mummy Returns in 2001 has a budget of $98 million, and then they have a box office return of $435 million. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like we've seen this so many times on this podcast, where the first one's extremely successful. They immediately greenlight a sequel. Sometimes they even get the writer and the director to return, and you're like, okay, great, everything's there. So what's the problem? Well, the problem on one hand is probably just time, because this comes out literally 2 years after The Mummy, which is not a lot of turnaround time. And maybe it's also just like a victim of the other movies that were coming out. Like you said, like it's got Phantom Menace syndrome, where they're like, well, we're going to take advantage of this ILM, technology, and we're just going to fucking blast the screen with just all this stuff. Well, just to get into the Rotten Tomatoes scores a little bit. So the first Mummy's got a critical score of 62% and an audience score of 75%. And to be honest, that's kind of low, I thought. But The Mummy Returns has a critical score of a 46% and then an audience score of a 63%. So I don't know. I think overall that Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz are obviously, you can just watch them and it's entertaining enough, but there's too many elements to the plot, and the plot's also so convoluted that I feel like the moments that I remember really liking from The Mummy are always related to just like the littler moments with the characters than they are like the big action set pieces. Because even that battle at the end that happens with all the dogs, I remember as a kid being like, oh, that's awesome. But watching it this time, I was like, it like kind of just came and went. Because
I love how they actually defeat them and then they just come back.
Yeah, and did anybody die on the other side, like on the protagonist side in that battle?
They did. They just didn't show very much of it. They literally just showed the army is a lot smaller now, but I don't think they showed anyone actually dying.
Yeah, but it's
and all the horses are gone.
All the horses are gone.
Horses left. All the horses died. What do you think of did we talk specifically about the CGI?
If you're asking me now, I don't think it holds up. I mean, obviously, like, what can you say about the Scorpion King itself that hasn't been said to death? Obviously, at the time, I believe that there was rights issues and they weren't able to get a scan of The Rock's face. So they had to essentially finish up that sequence in like 8 months before the release, like in theaters, and that's without The Rock's face.
They should have just made it like a scorpion face then. I didn't know that was the issue. I don't know. When you're a kid, you always realize they're building up to the Scorpion King, but then you're a kid and you've seen the movie already, so it's like you're just like, oh, he looks goofy. But when you're kind of like separating yourself a little bit this time and pretending you've never seen the movie before, they really build the Scorpion King up, and you want it to look intimidating and scary. And yeah, it really just, that third act just falls apart when they can't deliver on that. But I tell you what, the one moment I do love is when Rick kills the Scorpion King, and then Imhotep does that dramatic no. It's like the best no in like it's better than the Darth Vader no. Oh, it's the best. It's like a soap opera no.
I was just gonna say, it feels like he's like doing a soap opera. All right, Drew, I got some questions here for you about The Mummy Returns, and if you get all these right, you get to help work on the next Mummy reboot.
How exciting.
All right, so the first question is, in the beginning of the movie, they say that the battle that the Scorpion King's in, it took 7 years. How come nobody looks 7 years older of walking in of a 7-year battle?
You think that he would have like facial hair or something?
I thought he was gonna have a big beard.
A great big bushy beard.
So my question, he was like, "Where's his beard?"
I don't know. I completely forgot that it was 7 years. I thought it was like I thought that whole flashback sequence happened in like a matter of months.
And he does not look different. His hair doesn't get longer. He doesn't have like scars from a 7-year battle. It'd be cooler if he was like skinnier. If he like lost a lot of weight, he lost all his muscle, like use the CGI to make like The Rock like a little like a little twig.
Like Christian Bale from The Machinist.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually want to stay in this because my second question to you is, how does the Scorpion King die the second time? Because I know he dies from a fireball and then his bracelet falls off, but who shot that fireball?
I think it's almost like a monkey's paw type deal where it's like, I want an army to control Egypt and then I'll give you my soul. And it's like, as soon as he's got the conquest done, it's like, all right, I'm taking your soul. So it's like he doesn't get to enjoy any of the fruits of his labor.
See, that would have been nice if that was in the movie.
It's definitely not stated directly.
And then my final question is, after Evelyn is brought back to life, she tells Rick, do you want to know what heaven looks like? Drew, what do you think she saw?
That's the line I fucking hate.
When she said that, I was like, oh my. I like to think that Evelyn got to see like Benny in heaven and all the people that died from the first mummy.
Would you like to know what heaven looks like?
How about no, you crazy Dutch bastard?
So as always on this podcast, we ask 3 questions that lead to a final vote of was it worth going back again? And the first question is, does it work as a sequel?
I think it does work as a sequel. So I'm going to say yes to the first one. I feel like as we've been doing more of these episodes, I keep having to like balance it. And it's like, because it's never a straight yes or no. It's does it work more or does it fail more? And I think this works a little bit more despite all the failures we kind of talked about. The big thing that I kind of want to focus on for this is the characters developed and they didn't go back to the way they were in the original. I think a big part of that is the fact that they have their young child now. And what's honestly really interesting about this sequel that I don't see happen a lot is they do a bigger time jump than what actually happened in real life. Because like you said, 2 years pass in real life, but 9 years pass over the course of the movies. When you have that big time jump, you have an excuse to have your characters change more. And then you have, giving them Alex, it's like, okay, well, they have to act more parental. And there are moments where I think that really works, especially with Alex. And then there are moments, I think the worst moments when they are parents are when they are alone and they're just like in love and intimate.
Yuck.
I hate those moments. I like when they're with Alex and it's more like playful and more like true to the original characters. And there are plenty of those moments. So that's a big reason why I think it succeeds as a sequel.
It's really hard for me because like as we like talk about all this stuff, it really does make it sound like it doesn't work as a sequel. You know what I mean? Just because of all the like plot conveniences or just the overstuffed plot and unnecessary villains and lack of motivation, lack of consequences. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is just the execution. So like, I'm going to be nice and I'm going to say, I think it does work as a sequel. Whereas, and if you're just like watching it back to back, you'll be like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is like the next kind of steps. But when you do add in that like 9-year jump and it's really just so we can have like a kid thrown into this, it's like you barely work as a sequel. So for me, it's like I'll give it a check just to be nicer because I'll say like, hey, at least they're like they are like going in that direction, but I just don't think the execution is well done. So it's one of those things where it's like it's not a complete cash grab, but it is rough. It is rough. So I'll give it a check, but it's got like an asterisk next to it. Like it does work as a sequel. So that sounds like it's going to get 2 very hesitant checks. So the next question is going to be, is it enjoyable / entertaining? I'll start this one off first, and I will say it is enjoyable / entertaining, but it does get tiresome by the third act, I would say. I would say the most like enjoyable stuff is like a lot of the London sequence, a lot of the beginning. And by the time we get to that second half, and we start doing like more flashbacks and they're just like flying in the sky on that boat and we're really just waiting to get to ground again. Once we get to ground again, it gets better again. But the front half of this movie is so much better than the back half of this movie, I think. So I do think it's enjoyable / entertaining, but it almost overstays its welcome. And it kind of starts to a little bit near like that battle stuff, I think.
I'm giving this a yes too, but it's mostly just from experience when I was like younger and watching it and just being like, because this is probably one of the movies I've seen the most. Like this and like Star Wars. So it's got to be successful if, I've seen it that many times. So, and not to like poke fun at it, but to actually like get enjoyment out of it. So yeah.
And it makes sense when you're a kid too, because when you're a kid, that's a lot of like energy and it's like very high octane. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
And even like you said, with the pygmies not really working as much as an adult, because it's a little bit too goofy for being, it's almost like the dark moment of like the second, it's right before the dark moment, and it's like almost the goofiest sequence in the whole movie. It's like, it's still entertaining at the time. You know, you can go back and like analyze it and be like, oh, it doesn't work. But when you're watching it in real time, even the stuff that doesn't work still kind of works. Even the goofy looking Scorpion King, you can kind of like laugh at that and be like, oh, ha ha ha.
That sounds like it's going to get another 2 checks. So the last question is going to be, does it need to exist? I feel like I know how we're going to vote on this, but you can go first.
Okay, I'm going to say no. Really didn't feel like it needed to exist, especially in this form. This is where I'm going to like penalize everything that like all the bad stuff that happened probably kind of like in the execution part of this phase, where it's like if you, and I think a big part of it too is the rushed. It didn't need to be made if it was going to be rushed like this. You have the time. People aren't going to forget that fast about the original Mummy. Give it another year or 2 to really bake, and then release it when you're ready. So I guess technically the asterisk would be it did not need to be released this quickly in this form. But in general, I like the franchise so much, I kind of want to say yes, it did need to exist. Ultimately, I'll give it an X though.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to exist either. And it's really frustrating because, like, you say the franchise, but this is the only good movie, or not this one, I'm sorry. The first one is truly the only good movie in the franchise. And what's weird about it is that it feels like it has a world of limitless potential, right? Because they tried to do this in the third one by doing a completely new Mummy. So it's just kind of like a wonky kind of experiment where when you did have like this world and these characters, where you could have really done anything. You could have gotten into like just different cultures and different places around the globe that have their own kind of like mummies and stuff like that. So I don't know. It doesn't need to exist, especially once you see the final product too, because it is just like, even it's a loud mess, but it's fun enough, entertaining, sure. But no, it doesn't need to exist. And frankly, I think like, you really can just be like, you can scratch that itch from just watching the first one. And you don't even have to really watch this one, I don't think. So if you're doing that math at home, that's going to be 4 checks and 2 X's. So it is going to get 1 giant check for worth going back again. Man, that is generous, but I feel like it's only because of like nostalgia and the fact that like, you know, a lot of like a big chunk of people like grew up with this movie. So it is still like entertaining to them. So for us, it's like in the case of summer blockbusters, sure, worth going back again, but maybe after that, it's not worth going back again. But, you know,
don't worry about the Scorpion King movie. Don't worry about Mummy 3. Did Mummy 3 even have a subtitle?
The Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, yeah.
Yeah, don't worry about those. Worry about the first one and maybe the returns.
Worry about the first one and maybe the 2017 Tom Cruise The Mummy.
Oh God, we should do that one next.
As always, thanks everyone for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, that you comment below. You can listen to all episodes of the Back Again Sequel podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can watch these reviews with video on YouTube. Just subscribe to wag.productions. And outside of that, you got anything else to add, Drew?
Glad to see me now?
Just like old times, huh?
All right, everyone, we'll see you next time.